Top 10 criminals' reactions after getting life sentences. 1. Sandell Jackson. Sandell Jackson was convicted of first-degree intentional homicide and armed robbery in the death of Jose Rodriguez in 2018. Jackson was 17 years old at the time of the crime, but he was tried as an adult. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole by a Milwaukee County Circuit judge in August 2020. He began to freak out when the judge denied his parole request. 2. Jennifer Mee. In 2010, Jennifer was arrested and charged with first-degree murder in the death of Shannon Griffin, a man she and 2 accomplices allegedly lured to a location to rob him. Jennifer was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Jennifer couldn't keep herself calm and continuously hiccuped after receiving her life sentence. 3. Racelyn Martin. 17-year-old Racelyn Martin pleaded guilty to first-degree murder for killing his 63-year-old grandfather with a hatchet. He was sentenced to life in prison. During the court proceedings, Martin was visibly upset and terrified about what would happen to him after receiving a life sentence. 4. Cashin Man. It has been reported that 13-year-old Cashin Man became the youngest person to commit murder in Kent County. Man allegedly killed his mother's boyfriend, leading to a trial where his mother defended him, causing outrage among the victim's family. 5. Stacy Rose Jr. Stacy Rose Jr. received a 10 to 15-year prison sentence for his involvement in a fight that resulted in the death of 49-year-old Briscoe, a father of one of the teenagers involved. Rose Jr. fled the scene but was quickly arrested and held accountable for his actions. After being sentenced to such a lengthy prison term, Rose Jr. expressed disbelief and shock. Despite claiming that the act was an accident, Rose Jr. will serve his sentence and will have to take responsibility for his actions. 6. Ashanti. Ashanti, a 12-year-old girl with a violent history, was taken to a prison to show her what her future could look like. In the footage, Ashanti boasts about her love of fighting and her involvement with a gang, but her bravado quickly fades as she realizes the reality of her situation. Despite her tough exterior, it's clear that Ashanti is just a scared little girl who has finally come to understand the gravity of her actions. 7. Roxana Silversky. Roxana Silversky was visibly distressed as she received her sentencing in court. Silversky had pleaded guilty to a plot to kill her own family. It's difficult to imagine the shock and horror her family must have felt upon learning that their own daughter and sister was capable of such a heinous act. Fortunately, Silversky was apprehended before any harm was done. Nevertheless, she will now serve a lengthy sentence in a women's correctional facility. Number 8. 14-year-old who stabbed his teacher to death and was sentenced to over 40 years in prison. 2. Jacob Morgan. Jacob Morgan, a 17-year-old resident of Rock Hill, South Carolina. Morgan found himself in court facing charges of arson and murder, which were connected to the death of his 14-year-old brother. Prosecutors argued that Morgan had deliberately and maliciously started the fire. Morgan was visibly stunned when the sentencing was announced, as he did not expect such a lengthy punishment. 1. Dexter Johnson. During the retention of Dexter Johnson, 20 officers were present in the room. Johnson, a 19-year-old, had been found guilty of capital murder and was subsequently sentenced to death in accordance with the laws of the state of Texas. While initially taken aback by the jury's verdict, Johnson eventually lost his composure and became enraged. One witness in the courtroom was so frightened that she immediately dropped to the floor, prompting concern for the safety of those present. Fortunately, the numerous police officers in attendance were able to prevent any further violence from occurring. It is imperative to recognize the severity of Johnson's actions, which have resulted in devastating consequences.